Wait, what about weird?
Hello, my name is Elena.
And I'm Echo.
And this is our podcast, What About Weird? A podcast where we discuss all things weird from cryptids and aliens to strange science and unhinged history. Today, I'm going to be talking about a interesting piece of almost legislation. So the year is 1910, and there's national meat shortage. And a growing ecological... I can't talk right now. I'm still shaking from running in the woods after my dog. I love him, but he's crazy. Let's start over. We're not cutting this. I'm just going to start my bit over. It's 1910. There's national meat shortage and a growing ecological crisis from a form of invasive plant. Representative Robert F. Baustred. I am going to mess up all of the names here because some of them are German, but most of them are French and just weird and I can't read. So Robert F. Baustard, maybe? Representative of Louisiana, proposed a plan to solve both of these issues. And the plan was hippopotamus ranching.
Like, raising them like cattle?
Exactly.
Oh my god.
Hippopotamus ranching.
Great. That's a great idea.
Yeah. What could go wrong?
Yeah, it's not like they kill people or anything.
It's 1910. We're still drinking mercury. Anything goes. Okay, so let's start by talking about what these problems were that they were trying to solve. So to begin with, there was a growing amount of water hyacinth. Water hyacinth is a free-floating plant known for pretty stalks of bluish-purple flower. I've seen it in you've probably seen it in gardens and stuff before here and there in containment. But it's actually illegal in a lot of places because it spreads so easily if it gets out. But has clusters of leaves and spongy stalks, and it can lift out of the water a fair bit. It's very similar to... It's related to water lilies, except water lilies are rooted. These just are free-floating. They can float wherever.
So do they have a root system at all? Or
Yes, they do. It has roots going down, like... Have you ever started a little clipping in water?
Oh, yeah, like when you propagate something?
Yeah, think like that, except that's just the way this plant lives.
Interesting.
Yeah, I went down a whole rabbit hole of researching this plant before I realized I had the rest of a different topic to talk about. So the plant's roots and their stems will link to form rafts in the water and in the mud, and these were also clogging the waterways, and they were choking out native species. As the plant matter decayed, they would tangle up even more and clog the riverbed, and they were drawing, as they decomposed, it reduced the amount of oxygen in the water, and water hyacinth, even alive, reduces the amount of oxygen in the water. This was killing native fish, which people were needing to, obviously fish and eat.
Right.
Which, going back to the meat shortage, which I'll talk more about later, but people are using that to supplement their food. But if they can't fish because the fish are dying, what are you going to do? In addition to clogging up the waterways and killing the fish, these mats of material would build up like a dam and would cause a lot of flooding. To top it all off, water hyacinth spreads at an insane rate. It can double in mass in 6 to 14 days, which means a small amount could be a big problem in a hurry.
Yeah, it sounds like the poison ivy in my backyard.
Yeah. It's just half the plants around here. I tried doing the math, but my brain wasn't working. I was trying to figure out how much, how long it would take 1 square foot to get to an acre. And then I was like, I don't think I'm doing this math right. And also, who cares?
Yeah.
I'm going to do all this math and everybody's eyes are just going to glaze over.
So you said this is 1910. Where is this at, though?
Louisiana, Florida, and Mississippi.
Okay, so basically down south.
Yes, the bayou states.
Okay.
But you're gonna hear a lot about Mississippi of Louisiana, and then a little bit about Florida, but it's mostly Louisiana because the guy proposing this is from Louisiana.
Okay.
And that's where it took over the most.
And that explains all the French names.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So water hyacinth is native to South America. It was introduced to North America at the 1884 New Orleans Cotton States Exposition, which is similar to a World's Fair. Mm-hmm. It was given out to attendees as a little like freebie or ornamental water plant to spruce up their home ponds and stuff. And attendees thought it was so beautiful, they brought it home, put it in their ponds. If they didn't have ponds, they put it in creeks and rivers and lakes behind.
That's really terrible.
Land. And from there, it's just spread. It spread like wildfire, taking over. And remember, I said it will multiply to twice the mass in 6 to 14 days. So in less than a month, your pond could, depending on how much they gave you, a little like koi pond could be totally filled in like a month. Okay, so now we've talked about the water hyacinth. Let's talk about that meat shortage I mentioned. So why was there a meat shortage? There was a population boom at the time. I was reading that the population had boomed by about 21% from the 1900 census to the 1910 census. And this was due to a number of factors. One, a lot of medicine was improving, so people were living longer, children were living longer, people weren't dying as early, people weren't dying from all kinds of disease, and then there was better farming, so people were able to get nutrients better, so they had a better, why is my brain not working? Immune system. Why did it take me so long to come up with the word immune system? I'm like, it has to do with sickness.
Yeah,
it's the sick system.
When you're malnourished, you're way more likely to...
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And there was also a lot more transportation, better transportation. Transportation was faster and safer than it had ever been. So people were immigrating en masse to America, and it was putting a lot of stress on the food supply. Mm-hmm. Yes, the farming techniques were getting better, but there were more people coming, more people living, and it was putting stress on agriculture. In addition to the increased population, there was a lot of diseases going around, the livestock that was killing off cows and stuff. I had a hard time finding what diseases were going around. I'm assuming probably mad cow or something. I don't know. I am not a cow expert.
Cows can get tuberculosis. Bovine tuberculosis.
Maybe. Yeah, you would know more about cows than I would. All of this was with the meat industry going through a lot of stress from the diseases, and then stretching that pressure even thinner with the increase in population. A lot of people were forced to turn to vegetarianism out of necessity and out of cost.
We fucking hate that, America.
Yeah, we can't say, especially in 1910. No, we eat steak.
Bacon
like
fat.
Man. I think I have it later on, but some people were so upset about not having like meat, and it was there's certain nutrients you can get from meat that people hadn't figured out how to create supplements for.
Right.
Like vitamin B12
and stuff. Did we even
stuff.
understand like protein and stuff back then? I don't know when we started.
I don't know.
With like nutritionalists or whatever.
But so a lot of people weren't getting the proper nutrients they need from meat, and a lot of people were considering eating horses and even eating their pets.
Oh my god.
Or wild animals and stuff. And it wasn't directly related to all of this. But only 4 years earlier, the book The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Upton Sinclair, who's a muckraker journalist. His book came out, and I don't know if you learned about it in school. I know I did. But it was basically exposing the horrors of the meat industry. And a lot of people were so appalled and realizing how absolutely nasty and gross it was. And it led to a lot of like federal food safety laws and stuff that weren't around. And there was a huge reform movement. So people, even if people could afford meat, they were skeptical of it because they'd read about all the horrors of the meat industry.
Right.
And it didn't directly lead to... This book didn't directly lead to the Hippo bill being put forth, but it opened people's eyes to the possibilities and made people more open to it. to the possibility of eating hippo meat because they were under the assumption it would be cleaner and safer and nicer because it's going to be out in the wild. And so the hippos would eat they were known to eat water hyacinth. I have it somewhere. I'm not sure where, but okay, I have it coming up. But the hippos were known to eat water hyacinth in Africa where it had been introduced. So they were like, well, we'll bring the hippos, we'll ranch the hippos, and they'll get rid of the water hyacinth.
So we couldn't just get more cattle from somewhere else? Why? Or like deer?
Because the diseases. Because they would catch the diseases that was going around.
I guess, okay, so that makes sense to me. But then why hippos? Like, there's deer, there's lamb and sheep. Why was there that jump?
I'm going to get to it later, but they proposed a whole bunch of other, like, exotic animals that they were under the impression that, well, this isn't a cow or this isn't a sheep, so it must be immune to cow and sheep diseases. Like, I know there's certain diseases that can get into deer from cattle and stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, they're like, we'll have Tibetan yaks in the Rockies and stuff. I'll talk about that later.
But there's, like, probably almost no scientific basis at this point to actually know whether or not these are, like, transferable diseases between these different species. So they're just fucking, I don't know.
Because I said so, and I'm a science man.
They're like, let me think about the most insane fucking animal that I could think of, and we're gonna eat that because it couldn't possibly get these diseases.
And because they don't look mean, and also they're like 3 times the weight of cattle. You know what? You take the effort to raise one. I don't know how much this man did. I'll get into his background of Broussard's background, but I don't think he was the person in charge of doing a lot of farming, so...
Oh, okay.
But I think his assumption was, well, one cow is only the third of the weight of one hippo, so what could possibly go wrong? So the answer to both these problems that the government, specifically Robert Broussard and some pals of his came up with was lake cow bacon. That's what they were calling it.
Lake cow bacon?
Lake cow bacon. This was a name that was come up with words. This name was come up.
I don't think that's
I can't talk. New York Times created this name. There we go. It was the New York Times. Blame it on them.
It's terrible. I would not eat something named that.
Lake cow bacon? It doesn't sound appetizing.
If I saw it at the grocery store, I would say no thank you.
See, I'm picturing like a terrible, terrible cross between a cow and a pig in a little swimsuit on a floaty. Lake cow bacon.
It's like fucking green for some reason.
I even put in my notes, if this seems out of left field, just hear Louisiana Representative Robert F. Broussard out. And you're just like, no. I got to this point, I was like, no. What if I don't want to hear him out? So like I said, hippos had been known to eat water hyacinth in Africa, where it had also been introduced and become invasive. It was introduced all over the...
So they're like, this is going to address our problem with this like overpopulation of this plant, and we're going to eat them.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
it makes a lot more sense to me now.
Yeah, that's why they're thinking do both of those. And people in Africa and a couple of the people backing Broussard here and helping him like push this idea had spent time in Africa during the Boer War and had eaten hippo and were like, it's actually pretty good. That's what they were saying, is like, it's actually pretty good because the high fat content in it, it's juicier and more flavorful. So they were thinking, it's tasty, or so people say. It's tasty, and probably can't get cow diseases for all we know. And it'll eat the water hyacinth that are causing us the flooding and the fish dying and the tangled roadways or the waterways and everything. You know, what could possibly go wrong? It's a win-win. So let's meet some of the people involved in this. First off, we have, I have no idea how to pronounce this man's middle name, but Robert F. Broussard. I wrote his middle name here. It's like Foligny? Foligny? I don't know. What? This Foligny.
I would need to see it. Hold on.
Why can't you have a normal?
Foligny?
Foligny.
Foligny?
Robert Foligny Broussard?
That sounds terrible. That can't be it.
Who was the brother of Edwin S. Broussard, who was a U.S. Senator. Robert was a representative in the Louisiana House of Representatives. Born in Louisiana on the Mary Louise Plantation near New Iber, Louisiana, in 1864. He was from a well-off family, attended Georgetown University, and later became the night inspector of customs in New Orleans, later being appointed to assistant weigher and statistician. After that, he went on to law school at Tulane University in New Orleans. After graduating in 1889, he was admitted into the bar the bar exam the same year and began practice in New Iber. And then I have a whole bunch of other shit I copied and pasted from the Louisiana House of Representatives website that really doesn't matter. It's just a list of...
Like, do we care about this man this much?
Point being, to wrap this up, he went to university, he went to law school, he did some stuff between university and law school. He was from a well-off family, and he grew up on a place that used to be a plantation.
Okay.
So well off. That's why I said, given his past, I don't think he was the one ranching anything.
And being a person in law school, yeah, it makes him well equipped to write a bill of sorts, but I don't know, this being a sort of agricultural and ecological bill, I don't think he has any fucking idea what he's talking about.
No. He is the man to, like you said, write the law, not everything else. So the next character on the roster we have is Frederick Russell Burnham? I think it's Burnham. He was one of the key supporters of the bill, and he was dubbed by multiple sources, and I quote, the most interesting man in history. I read so many articles on this man. I think we should do an episode on. He was just there. He was in the frontier of America for so many historical events, just accidentally.
Why haven't we heard of him then? I've literally never heard this man's name ever.
He is the inspiration for the Boy Scouts of America. He didn't found them, but he was the inspiration. So he was born in southern Minnesota. I wrote, his early life was riddled with fascinating stories and historical events, but I'm going to pass over it for the sake of brevity. Because I was reading it and it was there's nothing much for the first 6, there's right when he was born, there was some stuff, and then nothing until he was 13, and then it's 13 to every single year there's something going on in this man's life. And I'm okay, let's not, this man had a lot going on. So Burnham was an American scout, an adventurer, and a soldier who was very well known at the time for his exploits across American West, Africa, and other parts of the British Empire. He grew up on the frontier, and he was an expert frontiersman, marksman, tracker, and he gained a lot of early experience as a scout during the Apache Wars. He When he was older, he went to Africa, where he served as chief of scouts under Lord Roberts, who is considered the most successful British commander of his time.
Wow.
During the Second Boer War in South Africa, where he had seen hippos eating water hyacinth, and he had eaten hippo meat, which is why he's part of a supporter for this.
Right.
His survival skills and everything in self-reliance put him in a good place to become a British spy. Is outside of just military service, he befriended Robert Baden-Powell during the Matbo War. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, in Rhodesia. This man's just all over the place. Just throw a dart at a globe and this man was there. But like I was saying, his wilderness expertise inspired Baden-Powell to start the Boy Scouts, who was like, this guy is such a man. I want all boys to be like him. Let's start a program to make the boys like this man. Gotta make the boys like Burnham. So Burnham was deeply interested in conservation and exploration, and he was also a big participant in a lot of oil ventures and mineral prospects throughout California and Mexico. And he made a lot of big changes to how scouts worked, like military scouts and stuff. So I have a few more people here. I know it's a lot going on here. I thought it was fascinating to know all the different characters that led up to this absolute character of a bill. Because if I was just like, oh, this guy and this guy and this guy, you'd be like, well, that's weird how they come up with this.
But if
these
I'm
are
random people just listing them.
Yeah. But it helps give some context to the bill.
Right.
Because the actual bill itself, there's not a lot to it. It's like, let's ranch hippos. And it's fascinating to me to find all the characters behind it to help push this, and the faces people were seeing and the context that people were seeing in it.
Right.
Because the different people that are backing it really help give it gravity
and help you understand why they even thought this was a good idea.
Yeah, and why people were even considering it semi-seriously. Let's see. So the next person we have up is Captain Fritz Dunkies, I think is how his name is pronounced. Duque or Quuesne. Duquesne. Good old Fritz D. We'll call him Fritz D, if I remember. I wrote his last name. I wrote a lot of these guys' last names.
God, I'm terrible with names. It's
Me
so
too.
bad.
Me too. What episode was it where we called someone like Rampton Stambert?
Oh, yeah.
Rambert Stambert Lambert. That was it from
Lambert, Jeff the Talking Mongoose.
Yeah. That's just why we're bad at names. It's just Rambert Stambert Lambert. Peak name right there. So we'll call him Fritz D. Try to remember to call him that, or Duquesne.
You could go really hard and like try and do an accent and everything.
Don't put the pressure on me. I can't do accents I can do accents when no one puts pressure on me.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry I asked.
Yeah. Be sorry. Be very sorry. Feel bad. Duquesne. Okay, I need to. This is gonna bother me.
Bring up like the AI voice, and it's gonna be so off. It's gonna
Duquesne. Actually, Duquesne. That might be close. I don't fucking know. Duquesne.
It's gonna be like 10 minutes of Elena being like, do
you have the time to listen to me whine about nothing and everything all at once? So he was born in South Africa. He was a soldier and a spy and a journalist and also an adventurer in Africa. He did a lot of sabotaging and deception. It was sort of his whole bag was like intelligence and sabotage.
Imagine, like, being, like, your job title. What are you good at? Intelligence and sabotage.
I'm good at sabotaging intelligence.
Put that on a business card.
So he fought against the British during the Second Boer War. Being from South Africa and fighting in this war, he had eaten hippo. Mm-hmm. Seen hippos eat the water hyacinth, which is part of the reason why he was backing this. So aside of just the Second Boer War, he was in both world wars, which wouldn't come till later, but just an interesting point that it said he was a known spy, well-known spy, which I feel like if you're well-known for being a spy, you're not a good spy. But everything I read said he was a great spy.
This is the best spy ever. We all know him, but he's really good.
We put his face... He just wears a fake mustache and nobody knows who he is.
It's like Clark Kent.
Yeah, glasses and he has like the glasses with the big fake nose and the fake mustache and nobody knows who he is. I don't know. Is that Groucho Marx?
He like takes them off. They're like, oh shit!
It's Fritz D! But they just have, like, Employee of the Month, and it's a picture of him. But they change it so it's a different disguise every month, his last disguise that he used. And everyone's like, oh, I knew it. There was something odd about that guy. An interesting thing about good old Fritz D was that he was actually a wartime, personal adversary of Frederick Russell Burnham, the most interesting man that I had mentioned. I had read a couple sources saying that at one point they had even been assigned to kill each other, but then just didn't. So, next person we have is William Newton Irwin. There's not a whole lot out there about him.
That's a good name.
I know,
William
it's a solid
Newton Irwin. I love it.
Yeah, I tried looking this guy up to find more information about him, and apparently a lot of people also thought it was a good name, because there's so many people named William Newton Irwin.
Really?
There's a lot of William Newton Irwins. I found a lot about this guy. I found stuff from, like, William Newton Irwin, attorney at law in 1976. William Newton Irwin on Instagram, businessman. It's just a name for getting shit done, I think. Like, every William Newton Irwin I found was, like, out there doing professional shit.
That's literally the next animal I get is going to be named William Newton Irwin.
It'll be another chameleon, like Edward Bartholomew. What is your chameleon's name?
Sir Charles Frederick Crewe III.
Why do I think there was an Edwin in there? Or Edward?
You could say any name and I'd be like, yep, that's it.
William Newton Irwin, your chameleon. So, your chameleon was a researcher with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Bureau of Plant Industry in 1910. And he was one of the experts that Broussard, the original guy, the politician, had brought in to testify. And the other two experts that he had brought in were the other two guys, Fritz D. and Burnham.
Right.
There's, like I said, there's not a lot about Irwin, but I found a great quote from a more recent news article looking back on his career, saying that he appears to have spent his career campaigning ideas that were simultaneously perfectly logical and extravagantly bizarre. Irwin was the one who actually convinced Broussard of the Hippo bill. He was like, he was the one to be like, hear me out. This is a good idea. I just need you to get this into the government. You're the guy with the political power.
Interesting.
And
I gotta start finding different words for interesting. I literally looked up a list on my phone, so...
Huh. Quite intriguing.
How riveting.
Riveting. Take a drink every time we say interesting.
Ugh, I hate it. Every single time I say it now, I'm like, fuck.
Yeah,
Use literally anything else.
I've noticed that a lot with myself, with a lot of listening back to the podcast. I'll hear myself say the same words, and I'll be speaking, and I'll say it, and I'm like, ah!
This is a good one. Unputdownable.
Unputdownable. William Newton Irwin is unputdownable. As the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Bureau of Plant Industries in 1910, he's quite unputdownable. Yes, indeed.
It's like, okay, what is he, a fucking book?
All of these dudes are from, like, the South. Why am I doing a British accent?
I don't know. It just makes it so much better.
If you're being fancy, you're gonna use a British accent. Them's the rules. I didn't make them. I just follow them. So this quote goes on to say that in regards to Irwin, any resistance to the ideas that he came up with came down to plain simple-mindedness. So anytime someone's like, that's a crazy idea, he's like, oh, you're just being simple-minded.
He's like, you're actually just a dumb bitch.
Yeah, he's just... Honestly, I like that he's not gaslighting anyone. He's just like, you're fucking stupid. Stop being stupid and have some whimsy in your life.
He's not even trying to explain. He's just like, it's because you're fucking dumb. You don't get it.
You're just a big old dummy. So, lastly, when it comes to people involved in this, he wasn't directly involved, but we have the man, the myth, the legend. Can you guess who it is?
In the 1910s?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea.
Teddy Roosevelt.
I knew it!
Whenever there's something whack going on around this time, you can bet your bottom
I should just fucking guessed it.
Teddy Roosevelt's going to be involved.
That's literally, I was this close. I knew it was him.
So, while Roosevelt was not directly involved in promoting the bill, he did put his support behind it. Even though his presidency ended the year before, his influence he still had a lot of influence, and being notorious for traveling and being for conservation and stuff. Remember, this is the guy that really started the national parks and stuff. Mm-hmm. A lot of conservation and stuff. So his word meant a lot to people, and like politically and intellectually, especially in a environmental sense at the time. Mm-hmm. So him saying that, he was the man to listen to for these sorts of things. So now that we've talked about everyone who's sort of loosely involved, we're not going to bring up Roosevelt too much. I just wanted to bring up that it was important that he backed it at the time, because it helps add context. So here we are back in 1910, and March 24th, 1910, Brostad was standing in front of the House Committee on Agriculture, and he was putting out this plan that he had for the American Hippo Bill, also known as House Resolution 23261. He believed that the importance of hippos constantly having this insatiable hunger, as they believed, or if you will, hungry hippos. I couldn't get through this podcast without making that joke. Brought from Africa would help rid Louisiana, Florida, and some of Mississippi of the water hyacinth that had been plugging their waterways and causing all these problems. And then when the hippos had been fattened up, they would take them to be slaughtered, and it would be a revitalizing, low-cost meat supply. Mm-hmm. And like I'd mentioned earlier, they were under the belief that one hippo would be worth 3 cattle, because on average, hippos are between 3,000 to 9,000 pounds, as opposed to the average beef cattle being around 1,200 pounds.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, so that could be like way more than 3 times a cow.
But how would you control that? Because I'm not a cattle rancher, but I feel like if you can try to control an angry cow, it's hard enough.
That's the thing is, you can drive cattle on a horse or, like, get on a fucking,
You have
like,
to drive...
gator and, like, gator not as in, like, alligator, you know, like, one of those.
I'm thinking
They
of
look
things
like a
that go
golf
over
cart, except they're not.
A four-wheeler?
Yes, but they're, like, closed in like a golf cart is. They're called a gator.
Okay, I was picturing, like, shoe gaiters, you know what I mean? The ones that go over your shoes to keep, like, ticks and stuff out.
Oh. I think it's, like, a brand name. That's probably
Gotcha.
why. But anyway, you, like, get on those.
Which they didn't have at the time.
You're, like... Or you, like, get on a horse. Like, the official way that you, like, drive cattle and deal with cattle, you get on your fucking horse.
Yeah, that's what
There's
I figured.
no fucking way you could drive hippos with your horse.
Unless
They
you're, like,
will eat
riding
your
a
horse.
bison.
Yeah. I mean, maybe.
So, I know we've already run a little long on this. Cause
That's okay.
I have, like, 7 pages on this.
Wow.
I went deep. If I hadn't done all the research on the people behind it. But, so the news was really pushing it. Like I said, the New York Times had dubbed it Lake Cow Bacon. William Newton Irwin was saying that this could easily add over 1 million tons of meat a year to the supply, which would be
Jesus.
huge for
Yeah.
this struggling meat industry. And he was also saying that there's no reason they couldn't find a place in the United States for more than 100 species of animals that are all over the world that have yet to be domesticated. There's so many animals we haven't domesticated. Why don't we domesticate them?
Because that's the goal, right? It's not to protect the ecology or the animal species. The goal is for us to domesticate all the animals, right?
Power! I need power over nature to be a man! So that was the back point behind this. The main point they were pushing was hippos will eat water hyacinth, we can farm them. But the point behind it they were pushing was there's all these exotic species that we can farm that we haven't started farming. They could put small antelopes on family farms. They could put herds of Cape buffalo alongside cattle to be driven across the west. They could farm rhinoceroses. They could farm rhinos in the southwestern desert. They could put Tibetan yaks in the Rockies. There was so many more. They had a plan for all these different exotic animals for every nook and cranny and corner of the country. Mm-hmm. And they are like, this'll fix the meat industry. If this bill was passed, all Americans, no matter what their socioeconomic class, none of them would ever have to go without meat again. And for just about $200,000, or about $8 million today, America's, quote, unoccupied and unused government lands could be filled with domestic animals from all over. In the past, the U.S. had already imported foreign animals. Between 1891 and 1902, over 1,000 reindeer had been brought from Russia to fill the vacancies left by diminished caribou herds in Alaska. And at the time of the hearing, when this bill was being proposed in 1910, around 20,000 reindeer were now residing in the frozen tundras of the Alaska Territory. All we have to do is to be saved from vegetarianism, wrote the Daily Arizona Silver Belt, is to cultivate a taste for hippopotamus, rhinoceros, camel, elk, springbok, dyke, giraffe, and other African animals. Perhaps these animals, some of them at least, are not as bad as they sound.
That's how people from Arizona sound. BTW, if you don't know.
The only person I know in Arizona is from California. So, yes, this is how people from Arizona, everyone just sounds like this. It's 1910, we all sound like this. So like I said, there was this serious meat shortage at the time. I keep bringing that up. Beef prices were really soaring because in addition to all of those, I don't know why I didn't put this earlier, but in addition to all of the diseases and stuff, the rangelands and stuff were overgrazed. And so that was also crippling the meat industry.
Right.
I have like 6 places I just wrote the same thing over and over again. This is what I get for writing my notes while I'm tired.
That's how my next couple episodes are going to be. My notes are so fucked up looking.
Yeah. Well, also, this bill is literally just all over the place, and this makes more sense than just the bill itself. So,
So, what did the actual bill say? Like,
I have some quotes from the bill at the very end of this.
Okay,
we'll
okay.
get to. But the problem with, in addition to the problem of like starvation and malnutrition, that what was dubbed the meat question. In addition to that, it was a major hit to the self-reliance and the sort of strong self-reliance, independence mentality that was being cultivated in America at the time. And there was a big push for since people were pushing and pushing and pushing for so long on all of their resources, all of their land, they had started to hit the boundaries. First, they started to hit the boundaries of the land, of their resources, and there's this creeping feeling of, oh shit. So I'm gonna try and wrap this up. So I'm halfway through my notes. Let's summarize this up. I'm sorry this has gone on too long already. Again, rabbit holes. But people were hitting these limits. Around this time, the American West was the frontier mentality was dying, and this free roaming spirit was sort of going away, and it was bringing a lot of people down with feeling like, well, now I'm sort of trapped. Now we have to figure out how to live in this new world. A lot of things were being flipped upside down. A lot of technology had come around. Just in the last 20 years, the telephone had been invented. Carrier pigeons were going away. Trains were speeding across the landscape. Everything was changing, and the world was starting to feel a lot smaller. And with the Hippo bill, it sort of it still had this Wild West mentality to it of anything is possible. There's a great big world out there, and we can make it ours. And so it opened up that feeling cramped. A lot of people were more open to the idea of the Hippo bill because it was so wild and out there, and it let them feel this anything is possible feeling. So a lot of people actually thought this was a really great idea because it helped, like I said, help them regain that sense of wonder. It would take care of the water hyacinth problem. It'd take care of the meat problem.
Honestly, if I lived back in 1910, I don't know, maybe I'd be like, this sounds interesting, let's try it.
Yeah. When all of this everything had been said, everyone says their piece and stuff, the reaction of Congress to this bill was actually serious. They were seriously considering it. And it drew a lot of attention from public figures, from newspapers, and just the public in general, especially with the backing of Burnham and good old Fritz D, the Department of Agriculture, and Roosevelt. So a lot of people were taking it seriously because they had all these very important, influential voices behind it at the time. And the average American's reaction was a mix of curiosity and skepticism, but they weren't laughing it out. They're like, actually, this might be a good plan. It's a little ridiculous, but it might actually work. Unfortunately, with both Congress and the public, it did slowly lose motivation because mostly just because the logistics. They were like, how are we going to make this work? How are we gonna... There were some members of the public that were openly volunteering to go on expeditions to bring hippos back because they thought this was such a good idea. But just the logistics, like you were saying, how do you ranch hippos?
Yeah.
How do you do it? How do you kill these things? Like, how do you make this sustainable?
Have 12-foot tall fences with like fucking guard towers and trench
Yeah, you
guards.
have to make like brick fence. Like what's the logistics? It just kind of fizzled out. It wasn't like it was immediately shot down.
Right. Because unless you have a ton of money to literally travel to Africa, grab a bunch of hippos, which, like, that's going to be a feat in itself, get them on a boat, bring them over here on like a boat, and then, like, set up a farm for them?
Yeah.
That would be so difficult.
Yeah, you're going to have to spend all this money to bring all these animals over that we have no idea how to ranch. Nobody's ranched them. And maybe nobody's domesticated them for a reason, you know? Yeah. Like, people have domesticated birds and chickens all over. You know, people have domesticated versions of goats and cows and all over. Maybe there's a reason we haven't domesticated
at
hippos.
This point, we knew how dangerous they were, right? Like,
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I mean,
I think it just takes a few people going to poke a hippo with a stick to find out.
Yeah.
You know, they say the more you fuck around, the more you find out. And 1910 was the era of fuck around and find out.
That's so true.
In addition to it just kind of fizzling out because of logistics, a lot of people were like, I don't know how appetizing it doesn't sound very appetizing. We're not used to it. It's just too foreign.
Animals in general don't sound appetizing. Like, anytime that I remember I'm eating an animal, I'm like, Let's
read the proposal of the bill. The importation and domestication of hippopotamus, a large well-known species of African quadrupeds, would provide a new and useful source of meat to the citizens of the United States and aid in the removal of aquatic plants impeding navigation in our southern waterways. I have a number of other quotes here that I'm not going to read because fuck that shit. So that is the story of how America tried to solve two pressing issues with one whack-ass, actually slightly practical but not really attempt at feeding the nation and holding on to frontier mentality in a changing world. I am curious of your thoughts. Given that there is actually a bit of a meat shortage growing right now, do you think people might be open to something like this, or no, or do you think it would even be proposed today? Just out of curiosity.
With the government we have now, yes, I think it would be proposed. Some fucking idiot would say something like that. But where we're moving in the future is I think we're starting to realize that the farming of livestock isn't great for the environment.
Yeah, it's just not great in general. And I mean, some people might say we don't really have a water hyacinth problem,
right?
Anymore, as far as I know. But yeah, I think because of so many people aware of the meat industry, I don't think it would go very far. I think there's some people that are red-blooded Americans who wouldn't want to stop eating meat and beef. But I think a lot of people would be like... I mean, a lot of people are doing it anyway because of cost. Would be like, well, I can eat meat once a week.
Here's my thing, though, is I think where we're going in terms of the meat industry is I think we are moving more towards lab-grown meats.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about a lot of these lab-grown meats is people are like, oh, it's just like chemicals. No, it's not. Like, that is actual fucking meat.
Yeah,
that they figured out how to grow in a laboratory environment. And it's like
tissue for grafting for people. Are we working on growing organs?
Yeah, absolutely.
That is wonderful, and I think it will save us a lot.
Yeah, and on a molecular level, it's literally the same.
I must admit, though, the idea of lab-grown meat does not sound appetizing.
Right. But that's the only problem with it, is the fact that it doesn't sound appetizing.
Well, that was part of the problem with this bill, is that people said, lake cow bacon doesn't sound appetizing.
Right, which is true. But also, I don't know if I like the idea of eating a bunch of weird exotic animals. Like, honestly, I will take lab-grown meat every single day of the week over, like, someone saying, I'm going to kill this random animal in Africa. Do you want to eat some? I'm going to be like, no, bro.
And I mean, I think the problem is that another problem now would be that we're expanding so much, and so much rural area is being taken up,
right?
That we wouldn't have room to ranch these things, even if we wanted to. We're probably running out of room to, which is why we have giant sheds for big ass barns with no sunlight for farm animals now.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, it's only going to get, as our population grows, we're only going to become more crowded to the point where there's not going to be a whole lot of agricultural land left. And so we're either going to be forced to, like, shove all of our livestock into even smaller spaces, or we're going to be forced to find either meat alternatives or lab-grown alternatives, because, like, I don't know.
Or meatless alternative. We're going to have to find alternatives.
Yeah. Probably not anytime soon, but, like, maybe not in our lifetimes, but this is definitely something that, you know,
it's going to become a pressing issue.
Like, scientists are already thinking about and considering, so.
Yeah, given the time, we should probably start wrapping up. Sorry it lasted so long. I do want to read this one thing I found on, I'll post this picture on the Instagram. I have a bunch of these in my file, so I remember, but I found this great picture on, Wikipedia, on the Wikipedia page for this bill. It's a picture of two hippopotamuses, and it just says, 2 hippopotamus in their natural habitat, which is not Louisiana. That's where I'm going to end it for now.
Thank you for listening. If you liked it, please rate the podcast and share it with the weird people in your life. Follow us on Instagram at whataboutweird.pod, where we often share pictures related to the episodes. If you have any topic suggestions or personal weird stories, please DM us or email us at whataboutweirdpod@gmail.com.
And as always, wait, what is our thing? What the fuck is our intro? Always remember. And as always, fuck you.
Okay, go again.
Always remember
to ask about the weird.
Bye for now.